Hey everybody, welcome to Down Home Backyard Gardening. Now, I am not in the garden today, obviously, because today we are going to make sourdough bread. And I'm going to show you all the way that I do it. So if you're interested in making your own sourdough bread, watch this video and then give it a shot. So what do you need to make a sourdough bread or your own sourdough bread? Things you need is a starter. What is a sourdough starter? Well, a sourdough starter is very simply an active yeast that you create yourself, or you get it from someone else who has started their own sourdough starter. This process does take some time if you're going to create your own starter, but it's really simple. It's literally flour, water, and the air around you. Very simple, but it does take time. That would be on another video. If y'all are interested in seeing that, drop it in the comments below. One thing about your sourdough starters, you see all these bubbles? That is what you want to see. That means your sourdough starter is alive. There is an active yeast in here, and that right there shows you that it's alive. Okay, in this video, I'm not going to give an actual recipe because I'm still tinkering with my own recipe. So I'll give you examples of what you can do for each step, but my best advice is for you to figure out your own recipe, tinker with it, figure it out, fail. I've failed quite a few times so far, and just keep adjusting until you find one that fits you. The very first thing you need is a scale, because this is baking and everything in baking is down to the gram. You need your flour, and the flour I use is an unbleached bread flour. You need filtered water, so it's very, very important that you use that type of water. So the first step is you're going to take your starter, whatever amount that your recipe requires, that's the amount you're going to use for your starter. This one is right around 100 to 110 grams of active starter. Then you're going to take the flour. Again, your recipe will determine how much flour. I use between 475 grams to 510 grams, right in that range. I haven't exactly nailed down my perfect recipe yet, but I think I'm close. And then 350 to 375 grams of the filtered water. When adding the water, you want to make sure you've got your water about 90 to 94, 95 degrees. I use the microwave and this little thermometer to test it. The heat helps activate the yeast even more. You want to try to make sure that you get all of the starter that you possibly can out of your container. Because if your recipe calls for 100 grams of starter and you put in 90, well, you're off 10 grams. So you want to make sure you get as much as you can. And that's why I always make just a little bit more starter overnight. We're going to add the flour. Today I'm going to do right around 500 grams, right in that range anyway, so somewhere in there. We're going to add the flour to your starter. Then we're going to go ahead and add the water. Again, I'm going to go right around 350 to 375 grams. Okay, now we're going to take the water, add it in, just like that. We're going to mix it. Now, the first few times I did this, I used my hands, and it actually took longer to get all the dough off my hands than it did to actually stir everything up. So I don't use my hands anymore at all. I use spatulas. It just makes it easier for me and less messy. Okay, now we just blend it all up, mix it all up, get it good and mixed together. Make sure you're rubbing the sides down. Get that water and get that active starter combined with the flour. Very, very important that you get all this combined as best you can. And see, that's how it's going to start looking right off the bat. And you just want to keep mixing. If you need to add more water, do it very, very slowly. Remember, you can only add more in, you cannot take it out if you overdo it. If you do happen to add too much water, then you're going to have to add a little bit more flour, and then you're on, and then who knows how it's going to turn out. So try to be really, really, really slow when you're adding your ingredients together. And that's about how you want it right there. You want it to start looking like a dough. Now, sourdough bread is a sticky dough. So the fact that it's sticky is absolutely normal. Hey everyone, and there it is. Just like that, you got your sourdough starting right here. Okay, the next step is just to cover it with a wet towel. It doesn't have to be a dripping wet towel, just a wet towel, and set it aside for 1 hour. That's allowing that active starter, the flour, the water, all to start melding together and creating your dough. So we'll be back in 1 hour. All right, everybody, it's been an hour. Now, this next step requires you to add salt to the sourdough. So we're gonna do about 9 grams of salt. You can use the pink salt like I'm doing here, the regular iodine salt, you know, whatever. Oh man, I did way too much. We're gonna do 9 grams. I'm just not even paying attention. Some recipes call for 10, some call for 8. I'd just go right in the middle and do 9. Take this and add it into the dough. I've already salted this dough, so I'm not gonna add that in there, but that's what you would do. Once it's been added to your dough, you're just going to continue mixing it around. And as you can see, the dough is still pretty sticky. That is absolutely normal. But mix it up really, really good. And you see how it's starting to really look like dough here? And that's just from it sitting over an hour, just letting all of that yeast and flour, water, and now the salt mixing all together. That's what I like. That's how I like to leave it right there. Just a little ball of dough. Once you have it done, you're gonna sit it off to the side again, and we're gonna wait 1 more hour just to let the salt now incorporate into the dough. We will be back in another hour. Okay, it's been an hour. The dough is now ready for the next step, which is the folding process. And the reason you want to fold your dough the way I'm going to show you is it helps strengthen the gluten. Why is that important? Well, you want the gluten to be strong inside the dough because as it bakes, the yeast will release gases that the gluten will trap, which will give your sourdough that airy, holy look inside the dough. Now, this next step we are going to do 4 times. We are going to fold the dough every 20 to 30 minutes. You all figure out what's best for you as you practice. Me, I do about 28 minutes to 30, just depending, right in that range. This is the way that I fold, and I've had no issues with doing it this way. There are other ways to fold, but this is how I do it. Now remember, the dough is a sticky dough. So what I advise you to do is get some water on your hands for this next step, just so it doesn't stick to you so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one side of the dough and we're just going to lift it up. We're just going to lift it up and fold it over, just like that. Then we're going to do the next side. I use a spatula just to help scrape it up. Pull it up and fold it over. Turn it. We're going to do this 1 time on each side. And as you can tell, it's already starting to strengthen right there. This 4th fold is always the hardest because you folded it 4 times like that. So now I like to just shake it to let the weight at the bottom pull it down and then just fold it over. Just like that. Even with the water on your hands, you're still going to get a little bit on you because, again, this is a sticky type of dough. Now, as you all can see, look at that. Nice folded dough in a pretty decent little ball. Okay, and like I said, we're going to do this 3 more times after this one. So a total of 4 times for a total of 4 folds. Once you finish each of your folds, put it back underneath your towel and wait 20 to 30 minutes. Okay, it's been 30 minutes and you can see how the dough has changed. It's actually loosened up So now we're going to fold this for the second time. All right, make sure your hands are wet. And we're just going to do this again. Pull it up, fold it over, turn it, fold it up, turn it. As you can see, the dough gets really, really tough by the fourth fold. And again, the dough is a nice little ball right there. We're gonna cover it and do this 2 more times. Now I'm not gonna show the next 2 times because y'all get it. Fold, turn, fold, turn, fold, turn, fold, turn. 4 times, 20 to 30 minute intervals, and we will be right back to start the actual shaping portion. Okay, so we're done with all the folding. We've done 4 folds, and now we are going to do the first pre-shaping of the dough. What you need is all-purpose flour, and as you can see right here, I'm putting just a light dusting of flour on the counter. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna keep it completely real. I just filmed me shaping my dough, and the camera was not on. So luckily, I've been preparing 2 other doughs while I'm doing this one, because I'm gonna bake 3 loaves today. But because I have these other doughs, I'm gonna use one of those doughs to show you the pre-shaping method right here. Now before we show that method, this is how my dough finished. I had a crack right through here, and I just come through and I pinch all the seam closed. For the pre-shaping, just to show y'all how to do it, I'm gonna use this dough right here. This is a wheat dough. I'm gonna take it out of the container, but keep the container close, and you're just gonna lay it down on the counter, just like that. You're gonna use one of these right here, which I cannot remember the name of it, but I'll put it in the video right here. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna push the dough away, and using this to pull it forward. Push it away and pull it forward while you're shaping it and rounding it. You don't wanna do this too many times. You just wanna start to get your dough into a nice, tight ball. And I am not the best at doing this, as you can tell, but considering how I used to be, I'm a lot better at it now. So just a nice tight ball like that. So again, away and back at you, away and back at you. All the while you're pulling it tight. You see how the dough's tightening up? That's what you want to see right there. So once you're done, scoop it up. Top side, smooth side down. And then right here is where I like to come back in and just pinch this big opening closed. It's just what I do. I don't know if other sourdough bakers do this, but I just like how it looks by doing this. Put your pre-shaped sourdough back under the wet towel, wait 30 minutes, do it one more time, and then we'll be on to the proofing stage. But we'll be right back in 30 minutes. Okay, as we're waiting for the 30 minutes to be up so we can do our final shaping, we are going to prep the proofing baskets. Now, these are the proofing baskets that I have here. And what you're going to do is once you finish the final shaping, you're going to take your dough and put them into these baskets. Now, it's incredibly important that you dust the baskets with a rice flour. It doesn't have to be this rice flour, but a rice flour. This kind of flour does not allow the dough to stick to the basket. So you want to dust your proofing baskets with the rice flour before you put the dough in. So what I do is I just get the flour on the brush and I just dust the proofing baskets. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to super coat the basket. You just need to make sure that the rice flour is on the basket. Just like that. Okay, the 30 minutes are up. The proofing basket is ready to rock and roll. We are going to take our dough one more time and shape it. First, put a little bit of flour back down in case you need it. To take the dough out of this container for the final time. You no longer need that container. And then we are going to do the final shaping, which is the exact same as we did for the pre-shaping. Push out, pull forward. Push out and pull forward. And as you can see, it's sticky. It's still sticky. Pull it into a really nice, tight ball is what you want. Pull it in, push it out. And as you're, see how it's starting to shape? Okay, and here's where we do something different. We are going to take this dough ball right here, and we are going to put it directly into the proofing basket. So up underneath, smooth side, down. And look how tight that ball is right there, y'all. You're now going to cover this with the towel for 2 to 3 hours. Proofing is the final step before it goes in the oven. And this step is very, very important because what it's doing is you're allowing your yeasted dough to sit and release the carbon dioxide inside the dough, which then allows the gluten to hold on to those air bubbles. So without proofing, you're kind of wasting your time. So you want to make sure you definitely do a good proofing, 2 to 3 hours. Now, you could either do this in the fridge or you can leave it out at room temp. I'm going to leave mine out at room temp before it goes in the oven. So in 2 to 3 hours, we will be back for the final steps before we have our bread. Okay, so it's almost been about 2.5 hours. So while we're waiting for the oven to continue heating, we're going to go ahead and start prepping everything. Okay, so the oven is preheating right now to be right around 500 degrees. 480 to 500. I've experimented with all three. 480, 490, and 500, and I'm just going to go with 500 on this video and see how this goes. The next thing you want is your parchment paper. Unwaxed parchment paper is what you want to use. And what we're going to do is once we take the Dutch oven out of the oven, take the lid off, we're going to put the sourdough bread on the parchment paper and then put the parchment paper with the sourdough bread into the Dutch oven, close the lid, stick it back in the oven. Once we take the sourdough bread out of the proofing basket and put it on the parchment paper, you're going to need to score your bread. Now I have this little blade here that I'm going to use to do my scoring. The reason you want to do a score is you have to create an expansion crease in your bread. In other words, you need to give that bread an area to expand out of without cracking the bread everywhere. So you're basically creating an area for the bread to expand through. A good depth for this score is about 1/2 inch. You want to give your dough a very good area to be able to expand as it rises. Now, this is also where you can create your designs, whether you want to put, designs of wheat or flowers or, whatever. This is where you create your designs on the top of your bread. That is during the scoring phase. These are very shallow type cuts. You don't go very deep, maybe 1/4 inch. Not much deeper than that for the artistic scores. What I do is I put a little oil on the blade. That way when I'm creating my scores, the dough's not sticking to the blade. So what I want to show y'all is a trick that I use to get the dough out of the proofing basket onto the parchment paper in a seamless manner. Before we do that, look how good that dough looks, y'all. Absolutely awesome. Okay, we're going to use a cutting board. You lay the parchment paper on like so. Then we're going to take it and lay it over top of the dough in the basket. And then we're just going to turn it upside down. And there it is. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a nice deep score like that. Maybe come back in a second time without cutting my finger. So that wasn't really working very well, so I'm going to use a brand new blade and I'm just going to create a nice cut. About like that. Now this looks really nasty. And then just for the artistic, just to have a little fun, just going to nick the dough into like a nice little wheat pattern here. It's really just about having fun, y'all. But this expansion cut is nice and deep. It will definitely work. The oven is up to temp. As you can see, I'm removing the Dutch oven right now. We're going to sit it on the stove, remove the lid, put the sourdough in, and get it back in the oven. This part needs to be done fairly quickly. Okay, we're going to drop the heat down to 490, or you could do 480, but I've been experimenting, and we're going to go 490 this time. Once your dough is back in the oven, you want to set your timer for about 20 to 24 minutes. You all decide what's best for you. I'm going to do 23 minutes this time, just because I found that's what's best for me. Once those 23 minutes are up, we're going to take the lid off the Dutch oven, leaving the dough in the oven, and we're going to let it continue baking for about another 20 minutes or so, right in that range. And we're going to drop the heat down to about 380, 375, somewhere right in there. Again, there's a million recipes, there's a million ways of doing this. You all find what works best for you. Once we are done, and those last 20 minutes or so are up, the bread is done. We're going to take it out and see what we got. So see you back in about 22 minutes. Okay, so the timer just went off. We're going to reach in and remove the lid. Now this is the stage right here. By letting that lid off, it's going to darken the top of the bread, but we also have to drop the temperature. So I'm gonna drop the temperature to 380, set the timer for 20 minutes, and we should be done. Okay, everybody, the bread is done. You see the expansion cut right there really didn't do like it really should have, honestly. And a little bit of the artwork over there, but let's go and get it out of that Dutch oven right now. Okay, remember, this Dutch oven is still super, super, super hot, so be very, very careful when taking your bread out. Okay, so I'll be completely honest. This is not the best looking sourdough bread that I've ever made. In fact, I'll show some of the other ones I've made that look way better than this one. But I'm not totally unhappy with it. Okay, y'all, and that's the steps for baking your own sourdough bread. Now again, just like I just shown right here, baking is a science. I don't have this narrowed down perfectly yet, but the steps are the steps that I showed you. It's just all about tweaking the grams, the timing, the heat, and all that. So hope you all learned something from this. Hope you got something out of it. If nothing else, just laugh at me and how bad that turned out. But I don't really think it turned out too bad, honestly. Everyone, if y'all enjoyed this video, do me a favor, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. I know this wasn't a gardening video, but I've been asked to do this video from subscribers, so even though it's not gardening, I'm still gonna do it. I like being in the kitchen. I mean, part of gardening is bringing your food into the kitchen. And I know bread isn't gardening, but it's still part of living a down-home lifestyle, which is what I'm all about on this channel. Everyone take care, God bless, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye. Okay, so bonus. I totally was not at all pleased with that earlier bread. So I decided to go ahead and show you all the second 2 loaves that I've baked. And I'm about to pull the second one out right now. And the difference is shocking. Okay, look at that already compared to that. This one looks so much better. Okay, so that's the second one. You see how much more it rose than that one? That one's very flat. That one is much higher. The designs held up better. And this one just looks a lot better. And this is the wheat bread that I made. Okay, so what did I do different on these 2 than I did on that first one? Well, if you remember, I said when you're proofing your bread, you can either leave them out at room temp or put them in the fridge. If you put them in the fridge, that's called cold proofing. And after that first bread came out, I was like, So I put the other two doughs in the fridge immediately. And the difference, as you can see right there, is unbelievable. Okay, so the design on this one isn't as good. I didn't put a lot of effort into it. But look how much more that one rose, even compared to that one, and especially compared to that one. So final tip for this video, if you want your bread to rise better, score better, do a cold proofing. Don't leave it out to room temp. At least that is what I have learned from this video baking those 3 loaves of bread.